Public Works Commission meeting to order at 6:31 p.m. The second item on our agenda is the agenda itself.
Motion to approve the agenda.
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion on that motion? Okay. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye for myself.
Aye.
Thank you. Okay, the next item on our agenda is public forum. So we invite members of the public to come and speak to items that are not on the agenda or on the agenda. If you want to speak on a particular item on the agenda, you're welcome to do so at that item or at this time. And we just ask that folks keep their comments to 3 minutes per person, and I'll set a timer for you. So why don't we start in the room, if anyone in the room has public comments. Welcome, please join us.
Thank you. Ooh, look, penny for my thoughts.
Right.
I'm excited.
We are.
Is there a bit of echo? I'm testing your mic for you.
I can hear okay.
Okay.
Is she talking?
No, I am not.
Even worse
But
now.
happy to keep testing the microphone until you tell me to stop. Okay.
Okay. Are we good?
Shall we try again?
Great. If you
Okay.
could please just introduce yourself.
I would be happy to.
Great.
Hello, everyone. My name is Christina Erickson. I'm the Executive Director of Local Motion, also a proud resident of the Old North End and daily walk and bike commuter. I'm here to speak on the next item on the agenda, so that kind of works out nicely. And actually, I'm going to read a statement that was prepared by my colleague, Jack Evans, who is not able to be here this evening. Jack is one of our Complete Streets specialists, and he also serves on the Burlington Walk Bike Council. So, Local Motion and the Burlington Walk Bike Council are asking the Commission to delay today's vote until this ordinance's language can be revised to address serious concerns that the Council raised about this language with DPW last fall. The stated purpose of this update is to clarify existing law and align it with state law. We support that goal. But as drafted, this ordinance does the opposite. It would create a significant deviation from both state law and current community expectations. We have expressed these concerns with DPW previously, and this proposed language does not resolve them. One point is on the e-bike ban on sidewalks. State law is clear. Electric bicycles have the same rights and duties as regular or conventional or acoustic bicycles, however you like to call them. Burlington currently has no local ordinance prohibiting e-bikes on sidewalks except in the old Inner Fire District. That means right now e-bikes are legally allowed on nearly every sidewalk and every shared use path in the city. This ordinance would eliminate that without any public conversation. But the unintended consequences go further. Because the draft fails to adequately define the bicycle facilities it references, it would also effectively ban e-bikes from every shared use path in Burlington except the Island Line, including Pine Street, Riverside, the Champlain Parkway path, Upper Main Street, and the Shelburne Street roundabout. By changing the definition for the city center, DPW expands the area where bicyclists cannot use sidewalks by 34%, in a part of the city with limited bike infrastructure and heavy traffic. Many people use sidewalks to ride their bikes. Families riding with or carrying children, older adults, people with mobility challenges, and anyone who doesn't feel safe in traffic traveling along streets where there's no alternative or comfortable bike facility. These are the people the ban would most affect. We are not opposed to a conversation about e-bike safety in any way, shape, or form. In fact, we think it's very much needed, but this proposal does not constitute a conversation and makes changes that deserve to be discussed by our community. Additionally, we believe most of the safety concerns people associate with e-bikes are actually caused by devices that don't meet the legal definition of an e-bike, and those devices are already prohibited on sidewalks under current state and local law. So we simply ask, please don't advance this ordinance before the conversation happens. The Burlington Walk Bike Council has developed an alternative draft that meets the stated purpose and need without these unintended consequences, and we'd welcome the chance to share it with the commission. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. No one else in the room? Is there anyone online for public forum?
We do not have any hands raised at this time.
Okay. I guess with that, we will close public forum and move on to our consent agenda, which has approval of our draft February meeting minutes and the North Champlain Street 15-minute parking reallocation.
Motion to approve the consent agenda?
Second.
Oops.
One question is whether we have the seconder filled in for the minutes, because there was one blank
Oh,
in the minutes that, I think for the adjournment vote.
it's
Right.
usually a Commissioner O'Neill Vivanco bar, like 1-2 punch, so, I would wager a guess that it was
I think I was the
Commissioner
motioner and she was the
Vivanco?
seconder.
Yeah.
Jim's always the motion, and the second is a motion.
So, why don't, so my understanding then of your move and approval is that with that clarification for the motion in the second.
Thank you.
The motioner and the seconder friendly to
I had a feeling I was a seconder, right? Even though I participated online, I do have this this inkling that it
For
in
last-
fact was me.
Commissioner Murtado, I believe you beat me to the second motion on that one.
I am friendly with the change to have
Commissioner
Commissioner
Murtado
Montano
be the
added as
seconder.
the second
Great.
Okay.
motioner.
Yeah.
City government, that's great.
Is there any discussion around this motion? Okay, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye for
Aye.
myself. Okay, the motion passes. And we move on to item 5, which is our bicycle ordinance changes.
Yeah, come on over.
We're gonna be in weird spots, so we both have mics. So I am Laura Wheelock, city engineer. I'm here for Philip Peterson, who's not feeling well today and is not able to come to speak for this item. We do have Caleb Manna.
Caleb Manna, Associate Public Works Engineer for the City of Burlington.
So essentially what DPW is looking to do is be able to update and modernize our language in our ordinances to closer match the state standards or state statutes for e-bikes, bicyclists, mobility type devices. They have more recently gone through and kind of better defined and separated what these devices are without the included separated definition for e-bikes. We either de facto go back to relying on state statute to define an e-bike, and then because we don't have this term anywhere in our own ordinances, have to follow anything that they provide and permit, or it falls under, my apologies, I'm not reading my actual notes, I was reading from my brain. It falls under one of the other categories of a motor assisted with pedal, which is something that we do differently than the state. So with adding that in, it provides lack of clarity about, do e-bikes actually fall under that, under Burlington City ordinances, or do we go back to the state definition? We are attempting to come up and match state statutes so that we have more similar terminology. The state, because we have been doing this for a long time, we started this with the Walk Bike Council back in 2023, has additionally updated some of their definitions, and I have 2 more lines that we don't currently have proposed in front of you today. Why we do feel that this is important. 1, based on what the city has for current ordinances and what the state has for statutes, we will not be able to allow the Main Street bike lanes to open. They will remain exclusively a pedestrian space, and this is because the state statute has a definition for bike lanes that is exclusive to roadways. It's lanes on the side of a road, striped lanes on the side of a road. It does not allow for deviation outside of the roadway. The Main Street bike lanes are outside of the roadway. They are in a pedestrian space. By state statute definition, this is a sidewalk. Sidewalks by state statute and our definition are pedestrian spaces. And the state goes even further to say they are pedestrian exclusive spaces. So it's important, if we are to be able to move forward to allow the sections of the Main Street bike lanes that are almost entirely finished and are going to be ready very soon to be able to be used for bicycles, to make action towards updating our ordinance language and updating specifically to allow the bike lane usage outside of the roadway so that we can put bikes there. Where I think the concerns that have been expressed in public forum and also provided by public comment about our misstep with e-bikes. Because our current, God, I forget the terminology, the motor-assisted pedal bicycle is just a touch different than the way that the state currently defines it. We have ambiguity here, which means that e-bikes could fall under this and then therefore by our ordinance and state statute be excluded from sidewalks currently. Or looser interpretation could say, no, we're gonna go back to the state statute e-bike definition. Burlington doesn't define it. You probably shouldn't have been on a sidewalk. The gray area here is that under state statute, they classify an e-bike as a bicycle. Burlington then further defines a bicycle, A, as a pedal, human-powered pedaled device, but we do allow those on sidewalks. There is a lot of gray area here, and the concern is we don't want it to be gray. If there is an accident, this gray area comes back to a lot of different people's liabilities. And so in trying to keep things very clear, we do feel that our existing ordinance doesn't allow e-bikes on our sidewalks based on the fact we lack a definition, and our definition currently could easily have somebody say that they fall under the pedal-assisted mobility device. We are open to some edits to the proposed ordinance changes to be able to, I won't say relax or change what I think our current ordinances say, because I do not want to change our current ordinances without an actual public process. So we could remove, and I don't know, Rob, are you able to share our agenda? Or are you not logged in?
I should be able to.
Okay.
You wanna see the commission agenda?
Our packet specifically, just so that people can see what we're changing. But if you have the proposed ordinance resolution language up, it is specifically around lines 78 through 83.
Be page 6 on the packet.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Why don't we just take a moment to pull it up here? I think it's the DPW packet.
I apologize, Rob. I should have prompted you ahead of time. Thank you. Just a little bit further down so we can see line 78. Thanks. So this is the part that gets, I think, where everybody has provided the most amount of comment, because we've added the terminology of e-bike into sidewalks outside the city center that are a device that is not allowed, and it becomes very explicit that it is not allowed. Whereas today we are under interpretation that could be read one of two different ways. DPW staff have felt that it was read that e-bikes were not explicitly allowed. We are open to removing e-bikes from this part of the definition to bring us back to our could be interpreted one of two different ways. And I say that it can be interpreted one of two different ways because state statutes take a tact with saying where e-bikes should and could be used, and they do not list sidewalks. They say they can be used on highways, bike lanes, and multi-use paths. So this is where they are not explicitly listing sidewalks and then kind of provide further guidance on what a sidewalk is. That would be our recommendation if the commission would like to consider it. While we have this up, I do have one other proposed change in kind of doing this extra deep dive into the concerns that have been expressed by Local Motion and our Walk Bike Council. I would propose adding in line 83 two words, the word multi-use path. This will allow this definition to align with state statutes definition. Well, they actually don't define it, which is one of the problems, but it provides the same terminology. And I would also add our terminology, which is shared use path. So that last line would read pathways, comma, multi-use path, comma, shared use path, comma, and in crosswalks. That is a recommendation I would absolutely ask that the commission consider to ensure that we don't accidentally exclude all of our current shared use paths and multi-use paths. Aside from that, we thought the rest of the updates were a little bit more straightforward. Being able to, again, focus on bringing the ability to allow Main Street to open with its full functionality, which does require a few kind of odd touches based on being inside of the city center and in and around the Church Street Marketplace itself. Caleb, would you have anything else to add?
Thank you, Laura. That was well said, and I believe, really truly represents, what we had been discussing internally over the last couple of days. And I just wanted to add one thing, or a couple of things actually. First off, I'd just like to thank Local Motion, for their commitment and dedication to this effort, and we do really truly appreciate those ongoing discussions. So thank you. And secondly, I just kind of wanted to explain our thinking here a little bit and kind of the ordinance process as it stands. So anytime we update an ordinance, anything in ordinance, it often starts at this local committee level. It gets kicked to the ordinance committee, to city council, back to ordinance committee, and back to city council for final approval. It's a lengthy process. And for that reason, we felt the need to make modern updates in all of Chapter 6. Updates that weren't necessarily directly involved with Main Street, but were relevant and outdated sections of that ordinance that, we all agreed in our conversations with Local Motion made sense to update. So I just wanted to say that, and in drafting that ordinance, we did, for what it may be, classify e-bikes with other, I've been calling them power-assisted mobility devices, because they're capable of producing similar speeds. We are aware of some concerns on the Burlington Greenway. I know this was presented to the Parks Commission to kind of help aid in some decision-making based on some comments and concerns that have been happening there. So again, we're not, we are open to having that conversation. We just feel, further public input is required to really, make sure we're all making an informed decision here that represents the best interest of the city as a whole. So, thank you.
Okay. Thanks. Commissioner comments on this item? Is anyone burning to go first?
I can if no one else wants to.
Sure. Commissioner Davis.
I appreciate the effort to do this, but when I was reading through this, I was very confused. There are things that are not defined. There are things that have like a hyphen in one situation and are missing a hyphen in another situation. e-bike is used somewhere, whereas electric bicycle is used everywhere else. Bike is used sometimes instead of bicycle when it seems like it should be kind of where it was like initially referenced. So I feel like there was just a lack of clarity. Like I went there and tried to highlight all the different like use cases to track it through the ordinance, and it just left me quite confused. For instance, what is a micro mobility device? Because motor assisted micro mobility device is defined, but just micro mobility device is not, and that's just not clear to me.
Correct. That definition currently exists in ordinance. My understanding is that that's like a scooter. And that's a good point. There's a lot of classifications in here. If you're not familiar with that stuff, I might not know what it is either. Pedicab, for example, that's a rickshaw is what I would call it.
That one I surprisingly knew, but yeah.
And again, these are modes of transportation we haven't seen previously or historically in the city. They're new and they're becoming very popular. So again, that intent is to take state definitions of those, acknowledge them, and really start to classify them based on the power of the motor and the speed they are capable of producing.
So is the motor assisted micromobility then meant to be something more like a scooter?
So you have your traditional Razor scooter.
Yep.
You would have an electric scooter that you can kind of sit on and ride, and it goes pretty fast. You have your e-bikes, which I think we're all familiar with, the different classifications of such. Some go really fast, some go a little bit slower. You have a motor-assisted bicycle, which is a bicycle fitted with a small combustion engine. And I might have missed one here.
I mean, this could be anything from the hoverboards to whatever gets created, which is the reason why it went from being kind of a description of what this needs to be to the power capabilities and how fast it could go, is kind of the change in direction, which then leaves it a little bit vague to anything and everything that it could be.
And is the goal of defining the anything and everything it could be, or not in some cases, but to encompass more with the definitions, is that goal purely liability based? Just so I make sure where.
It's just trying to make sure that, in a year, something doesn't come out that we haven't defined that goes really fast on a sidewalk, and because we haven't prohibited it or defined it, it's, if we went and started listing, this needs to include scooters, hoverboards, powered skateboards, so on and so forth. Now all of a sudden something's allowed because it's not listed.
Right.
Which is also one of the reasons why I'm against trying to list all of our shared use paths in our ordinances, because then it becomes outdated, we miss one, and we failed by the lack of kind of covering it with a different approach. So.
Okay.
We could put out clarifying information, which is what I'd also like to do on our website, so that we kind of list what we consider our shared use paths, so that if there was ever a question of what does the city mean by this, we can find this on our transportation page and say, oh, these are examples of some micromobility devices. These are some examples of the difference between the motor-assisted bicycle in the definition versus an e-bike now. So that those of us that don't know everything about powered transportation can figure it out. And I am one of those people. I don't know every single possible creation that has been made that could do this.
Yeah, I don't expect us to. It just some I was left uncertain. Like the electric personal assistive mobility device, is that a Segway? Is that?
You could make the leap to connect it to a Segway. We really wanted to consider users of motor-powered wheelchairs in this ordinance, and we did not want to disallow their use on sidewalks. And as defined in state statute, they are treated as pedestrians, so they are allowed to go where pedestrians may go, and it is truly a mobility device. They go much slower. There's a person in there who may not be capable of walking without it or traveling without it. So we did want to be considerate of that, and that's one of the reasons we included that in this definition, because we do see them around Burlington here and other places.
So that's what initially I thought it meant, but then it says self-balancing and 2 non-tandem wheeled, which to me does not say electric wheelchair, unless I'm misunderstanding.
Does non-tandem mean side by side as opposed
Yeah.
to?
Mhm.
That,
Yeah.
to me, sounds like when they changed the ordinance to make it so that segways could be on the sidewalks. And they didn't change it to include scooters, either by choice or by not knowing.
Well, would a powered wheelchair not be 4-wheeled instead of 2? That's part of what I'm
Technically, yeah.
confused by.
I may have misspoke a little bit there. So what you have indicated, Commissioner Davis, that's a segue.
Okay.
And I tangentially went off to talk about motor power wheelchairs, which again are considered a pedestrian. They have the same rights as pedestrians too.
Mhm.
But again, yeah, segways. We know they're around town. We know they do tours, and they often travel on the sidewalk.
So then, are the powered wheelchairs under motor-assisted micromobility device or somewhere else? Or do they need to be referenced here? I'm not sure.
We didn't feel they needed to be referenced here in
Okay.
Chapter 6, more specific to bicycles. But as we dove into this, and started asking these questions, that was one thing that came up. So we did check on that just to confirm.
Okay, gotcha. So is there the concern about e-bikes not being allowed on sidewalks? Is that the interpretation of the current ordinance without any of these changes? Is that like they were never technically explicitly allowed?
I have concerns that they could be interpreted as not being allowed. I mean, not concerns as it relates to trying to change something or not change something. DPW's position is we have concerns over how e-bikes are currently being operated and the possibilities for severe injuries to pedestrians because of how things are being mixed in the behaviors of some users of e-bikes. I would interpret our current ordinances and how you would read through this that it falls under a definition that says they should not be on our sidewalks. Again, there's enough room for interpretation that someone could argue through a path through state statute and then back around to we allow bicycles on sidewalks to say they could be on sidewalks outside of the city center.
I think what you heard from staff tonight is that there's a willingness to strike e-bikes from the list of prohibited activities on the sidewalk, which would allow us to go back and have a broader policy conversation with a broader cross-section of the public to determine what a proactive regulation would be beyond what's currently in ordinance.
So that would mean
It's essentially doing nothing different other than potentially just really relying on state statutes interpretation of where e-bikes can and can't be used. There's a reasonable possibility also that the state who lists inside of their statutes say that the cities and municipalities are not allowed to adopt ordinances that conflict with their ordinances, that they may take exception to our bicycles on sidewalks policy, because it is so old.
And again, we never had a definition of e-bikes previously and currently. So, that was kind of a gray area. It wasn't allowed or disallowed. It was just simply not acknowledged because that definition was not and is not in ordinance.
the question of is it a bicycle, essentially, there.
Again, I think up for debate.
Well, yeah,
as proposed in this ordinance, we should classify that and make that distinction.
Yeah, so here some of the changes are saying certain electric-powered bicycles are treated as bicycles with respect to usage, right?
Yes,
And then
up to
others
1,000
that are
watts.
others that are too powerful are not. Whereas right now, there's not something clearly saying certain e-bikes are entitled to the rights and usage of bicycles. Is that right?
No, you can get there through state statutes currently, and they become defined as a bicycle.
Okay.
What's not expressly clear is if the state would honor, or a court would honor, the fact that we allow bikes on sidewalks, and that could be seen as a conflict with state statute. Because of their definitions of sidewalks.
Right. Yeah. Huh.
But that's not what we're here to expressly debate today. We are in that loophole in that gray area currently.
Well, I guess a few other things before I lose my mind trying to contain the multitudes of bicycle law. Tricycle is mentioned under motor-assisted bicycle, but it's not mentioned anywhere else. Are electric tricycles supposed to be e-bikes, or are they supposed to be motor-assisted bicycles?
I'm not going to provide an interpretation of that one. We are really matching state statutes definitions, so.
So some of these definitions are pulled directly from statute.
Word for word.
All of
Oh,
them,
okay.
yeah.
Then I think that might be, okay, so it's the state's fault.
Yeah,
Now-
so we didn't
now
create these
I-
definitions out of our own, thinking or brains. This
Okay.
is what is
Then
written in.
that makes far more sense to me now. Okay. So I should, take it up with the legislature. Okay, then. So the goal was not anything to do with the definitions, which are beyond our control. The goal is, where do we put the definitions within our existing ordinances so that usage is correct?
That's a fair thing to say.
Yeah. And we're trying to not conflict with state statutes anymore by just having older definitions.
Okay. I think I mostly understand then. Yeah, okay, so we're adding the usage pathways to those lines that you mentioned to essentially explicitly state that bicycles and e-bikes can use shared use paths and that sort of thing. And that's the main thing, do I understand correctly, to allow the Main Street bike lanes to work as intended?
No, not quite. That's not quite the way that we effectuated that, but,
Okay.
Catching me off guard on that one. Do you want to take a stab at how we defined?
I guess to summarize, and I think I understand your question here. We want all these, call them new power-assisted modes of transportation to be able to use dedicated bike facilities within the city. Whether that's a bike lane, a shared use path, a bike path, whatever it may be. Anything that we have acknowledged and is a dedicated bike facility, we feel these modes of transportation should be allowed. Again, the issue, the really technical nitty-gritty issue in these definitions that we got hung up on Main Street, lies in these definitions of state statute. So, I know I'm rambling a little bit here, and,
Yep.
and I will be the first to acknowledge.
I found the line I was looking for.
This is confusing. It really is. It's multi-layered, and there's a lot to digest here.
So in line 82, we are adding the term bike lane to allowable uses for e-bikes and motor mobility assisted devices, which is something that state statutes don't do. Because they say we are defining the bike lane on Main Street. Additionally, further down under items 2, as to where the bicycle may be used in the downtown in the bike lane, which is listed behind the curb. The other kind of component I want to remind everybody of is Caleb has mentioned this process. This is, still needs to go to our ordinance committee, still needs to go to city council, back and forth. I understand this is challenging language. Our ordinance committee reads through these things all the time. They will find probably the same kind of grammar corrections and kind of clarifications of terms, because that's the kinds of things that they find. And we'll continue to kind of pick through this so that it's proper and structured too.
Then I think two bigger things that I was wondering about is, one, do we define bike facility anywhere?
We don't define the word or the term bike facility, but I would say there are a few other definitions in ordinance and in state statute that define the components of what we would consider a bike facility. So they kind of, take bike facility as kind of the overall encompassing term, and then it's further broken down into bike lane, bike path, shared use path, multi-use path, and things like that.
Okay, it was not entirely clear to me what bike facility meant, so I would recommend including a definition of it, even if it is just, hey, it's bike lanes, shared use paths that allow bikes, etc. And then the other thought I had is that I understand the desire to explicitly mention everything that you want to, so you don't leave anything kind of like in a gray area to the extent that you can. But one thing that occurred to me while I was reading through this was that it seems like in a lot of places, in terms of the intended use, it could be beneficial to have something adopted that was more like a no wake zone for boats, where it's like, yeah, you can have different boats, but it's your responsibility not to cause a wake, like within certain zones. So something that essentially says, like, yes, you can use e-bikes where, like, we want you to use them, but, like, if you're using them and going fast in these areas that are dangerous or risky, then, like, that is its own. Yeah. And I know there's a reckless usage component, but it seemed to me like something maybe even more lower level than that would make sense.
Sure. I will add one topic that came up in our discussions was, I think what you're hinting at here, and more or less a speed limit, for these modes of transportation. Hey, if I'm on an e-bike and I'm riding down the sidewalk really slowly, is that, really a cause for concern? Probably not. And we know, again, our friends at Parks and Rec have gone through this before. And one thing that kept coming up was that if I'm really fit and in good shape and I'm on a fast road bike, well, I can go just as fast or faster than an e-bike. Mm-hmm. So it was hard, and I think we all agreed really limiting to kind of approach that subject. And again, we're open to having that. Again, I just think it needs further public input and consideration. Which
would be a separate process from this.
Correct. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
I do want to highlight, as we've worked with the Walk by Council and local motion representatives, like, step one was, let's update definitions. There are a lot of other recommendations and kind of components of things that they've mentioned that could use improvement in our ordinances that are a little bit out of date, that do require a public process that we've just not had a chance to fully go through or vet. We're looking to add components of this into our Plan BTV mobility process so that we can collect public feedback from the entire city while we're talking about all of our mobility, so that we can help inform some of these next steps. So taking up the conversation about kind of the behaviors that we're struggling with this larger interpretation of, the size of a bike or the power of a bike versus sometimes people's capabilities is where we hope to get to be able to move this forward.
Okay. All right, then I think I understand to the extent I'm going to at the moment, and I appreciate you walking through that. I know that is, especially when they're not your definitions, it's a tough one to go through. So thank you.
Anyone want to go next? Okay, thanks, Commissioner Bard.
So I agree with a lot that the Commissioner just said, and a couple of points that I just wanted to bring up because I tend to be an e-bike user, and I don't exceed 12 miles an hour in many cases. But I do have to keep up with traffic when I am traveling on roads that do have suitable bike lanes, but there are many that don't have protected bike lanes. And either myself or my partner, when we're traveling, sometimes the traffic is just extremely fast and people are really close, and when they come to a stoplight, they actually pull into the bike lane and block me from going, and that's just the way people are. But sometimes that makes me go up on the sidewalk just because it's easier to continue on that way. And you hit the nail on the head that we're constantly getting passed by people who are in much better shape than I am, speeding by on a regular bike, and they're training. I think that the key thing is here, and it's listed in here about reckless, operation. That covers whether you're an e-bike or not an e-bike. If you're traveling too fast and pedestrians are in danger from this, then that's prohibited from this. But to completely take e-bikes off those roads or the Pat Greenway in those cases, I just think that there's going to be a lot of folks that end up not using bikes anymore, and then start going back to other ways of getting around, like cars. I had a few notes, and you mentioned speed limits, and I think it's Parks and Rec has to enforce those things, and enforcement tends to be the key issue in many cases for everything we do here, right? But are they going to be able to enforce and restrict e-bikes from being on there any more than they would with speed limits? If you had speed limits, and slow zones is the term that I wanted to point out to you. We had those on campus when we were bringing bike share, and we wanted to be able to have slow zones like in front of the library and on the shared youth paths where there's a lot of students and faculty and staff and stuff going around. Those kind of things could be implemented, but again, it goes back to enforcement. How are you going to stop people from doing it? That's the age-old challenge. Yeah, so I might consider supporting this if instead of saying e-bikes are prohibited from all sidewalks, is that what it says right now?
Yes, by including the word e-bikes under 78.
Okay. If instead we could say in lieu of using roadways that do not have protected bike lanes, then in those areas, and then once we do get protected bike lanes on them, I know that there's a lot of gray area, and I get that, but I to use a term that I Commissioner Fox actually said in a letter about, it seems like this is really a sledgehammer approach before we have more discussion about it.
So I do want to say, it was never our intention to try to put something out here that felt like a sledgehammer. We really felt like we were replicating our existing ordinance based on how we currently have definitions and how those are interpreted. If that's not something that you're comfortable listing in that way, I would suggest just removing the word e-bikes from line 78. We're gonna take your comment in about kind of being a little bit more specific, but I couldn't say that we've had any public process on that idea about being specific in that ordinance language, and would wanna have something a little bit more kind of comprehensive with our community before kind of being that specific. But it is a great idea about how to approach some of our challenges with where we do have great facilities and where we kind of ask people to mix different kind of modes and alignments.
Because I'll say too that we talked about wheelchairs, and many times when I'm going down North Avenue, I'll see wheelchairs in the bike lanes, because maybe that section, it's the time of year when there's too many puddles or too much ice or something like that. So people will go where it's safest for them to be. And if you restrict it and make somebody that just feels unsafe in the road because it just happens to be rush hour from being on the sidewalk, but that's their mode of transportation to get to where they're going to go, then I don't know. Maybe the bus there's not room to put another bike on the bus to bring further down. So The other thing too that I want to just point out, and I don't know if you've had conversations with the local bike shops, but I know when we were bringing bike share to the area, we had a lot of conversations with bike shops and whether we could put the new e-bikes that we got for a very short time on the waterfront, because that's where one of their primary sales was. And they asked that the e-bikes not be allowed, the bike share e-bikes, on the waterfront so that they could rent bikes to be used on the waterfront. But if you restrict bikes from being on the greenway or in certain areas, are they going to lose business? Have they had conversations with you about this?
So it's a little off topic. There's nothing in here that restricts bikes from being, especially on the greenway. And again, it was our interpretation that the bicycle pedestrian pathways was covering us for multi-use path, shared use path. It's kind of a really broad generic term. The fact that it exists a little bit elsewhere inside of our ordinance that's extremely specific is kind of the falter here, which goes back to my recommendation today that we add in the 2 words of shared use path and multi-use path to that statement to just eliminate any possible interpretations or limitations. It is absolutely, again, not our intention to have restricted in any way, shape, or form use on our shared use paths, bike paths.
All right, it makes me feel a little better.
Commissioner Montano, you're chomping at the bit.
Yeah, why not? It's called a sidewalk. It's designed for walking. And I just wanted to clarify that the state law does specify pedestrian exclusive.
State statute.
Yeah, primarily for exclusive pedestrian use, something along those lines.
Yeah, that feels right to me. I looked it up in the
So it
encyclopedia
says-
and
it
it said the
says-
same thing.
Sidewalk means the portion of a street or highway right-of-way designated for primary or exclusive pedestrian use.
Yeah.
Our city ordinance defines a sidewalk as that portion of a street between curb lines and adjacent property lines. So again, this is where we keep getting hung up on Main Street, where we have a bike lane within the curb line and between the property line.
All right. I think I understand. And I think this proposed ordinance language does clarify that problem. I would be okay with omitting the language e-bike on line 78. That just feels right to me as well. And yeah, it just makes sense, really. Like, it would be amazing if we had the capital to make improvements like we have going on at Main Street. I don't want this commission to stand in the way of making that happen and actually opening this route up for everybody as soon as possible. Yeah, I'm gonna leave it there, but I would be in support of approving this language as is at this time, with or without that change on line 78 in particular.
Could I add one more thing? Sure. Am I allowed to? Where it says motor assisted bikes, I'm curious, because you have mopeds, you have all sorts of different types of vehicles out there. I've always thought of mine as pedal assist. I pedal, but it has an electronic battery that helps propel me to go a little bit faster than my old body can sometimes take me. Is it too hard to add somewhere in there that the e-bike must be an active transportation mode as opposed to like something with just a throttle?
Under the e-bikes, which again, not our language,
Yeah.
it does talk about pedal assisted and the ability of a pedal assisted to start going faster than 28 miles an hour.
Mm-hmm. They can, and that's,
Yeah.
I
And then they
think
reach a
even
different
going
class.
downhill, I might not get it that fast, but yeah, okay. I was just curious because I do see a lot of people, and I'll say my partner sometimes, when I look in the rearview mirror, I see her keeping up with me, but her feet aren't going. And so I'll have to yell back, why don't you start pedaling a little bit there? You're never going to close your rings on your Apple Watch if you don't actually move.
You could get a tandem bike.
I hope she's not listening. I hope she's not listening right now. But yeah. Yeah, that was it. Sorry.
Yep. Commissioner Hayes?
Sure, yeah.
and I'm sorry because I feel like you've probably answered this a few times already, but I really want to clarify because it has been a bit confusing, especially regarding the state statute that you keep referencing. So am I understanding it that motor-assisted bicycles are already banned from sidewalks per state statute? However, e-bikes are classified as bicycles under state law. So then Vermont state law it also does not specify specifically regarding regular bicycles on sidewalks. Is that all? That's all? Okay.
Yes.
And so if e-bike is considered a bicycle per state law, then technically it can be on a sidewalk right now, and we're trying to clarify that. And that's why you're suggesting
Burlington.
removing.
And our updated definitions actually help support and clarify that, because our older definitions had some convoluted language that you could throw an e-bike into the motor assisted because it talks about having pedals.
Okay.
With the updated definitions, it allows the grayer path through the state statutes and then kind of back to Burlington for our allowing bikes on sidewalks to hold more true.
Okay. And what I'm hearing is what's driving this ordinance change is more around trying to align definitions with state statute. However, there are implications within this ordinance that may cause additional restrictions than what we have seen out, how people are using sidewalks right now. And I have not heard, and I don't know if we've collected any data related to e-bikes, electronic e-scooters on sidewalks in the city now. Do we have any accident data, any usage data along those lines that would inform us on how, on the implications or the safety issues that have been raised?
So we don't have crash data that's collected in that way.
Okay.
We struggle with privacy laws with the crash data to be that granular with our police department, but we are doing a lot better with receiving some more details that could eventually lead us to be able to disseminate bike versus bike or bike versus ped type crashes. To go back to the beginning, it was not our intention to unnaturally change what we thought was already an ordinance is what we were proposing for you today. I think it can still be read one way, it can still be read a little bit the other way. Our language does become a lot more clear in what we propose to you, but as recommended, eliminating one word and adding two others, I think gets us back to where we have been, just with a little bit more clear definition around our types of devices. Your second comment about the crashes speaks a little bit to, where we do need to go as a next step in a community. We need to start identifying if we need to provide more specificity around how we're using our sidewalks, what we allow on them, and in kind of what behavior. Because we are struggling with that, even on our shared use paths that are a little bit larger, and then asking kind of that mixing on a sidewalk feels very constrained. But I agree, we have limited rights of way. We do need to use them to our largest advantage. If we're gonna ask bikes to be able to move through the city, we need them to be able to duck into a sidewalk, when they can and when it's safe and in a safe way.
May I, it sounds like you've obviously been working closely with BWBC over the last couple of years and have incorporated some of their feedback, although we heard from them that they're not, hoping to see additional changes. Is there a reason why, and correct me if I'm wrong, was there other public engagement regarding these specific ordinance changes, with bike shops or other communities that have seen the ordinance, the proposed ordinance? And the reason I'm asking is there a reason why this needs to happen now before we go into whatever the public engagement strategy that is normally, conducted and to get public feedback? Is there an impetus behind needing this change now versus this being part of a broader engagement, strategy with the general public? Because I'm just concerned that hasn't quite happened yet, and there might be something that we're doing today with this update that has implications that we're not necessarily considering. And you know, we only heard from one person here now, and I assume that others would be here if they were up in arms about the proposed changes, but I'm just curious, is there an impetus behind having this done first and then going to public versus having this part of that broader engagement?
So to be able to back up on the history, again, we had started working with the Walk Bike Council and Local Motion on these ordinance changes in 2023. The list of possible changes are everything from the simple definitions that we're bringing forward today to being able to roll through stoplights when they're red if there's no other traffic in the intersection. They're very progressive ideas. They're tested in other cities. They could be successful here. We have a lot of times when we have very little traffic. These ideas we categorized into kind of high priority, medium priority, and like much longer out priority items. We still struggle with the level of outreach and communication that are necessary to take on some of these ideas, some of which you touched on. The changes here are definitions that really do not change our ordinance in any substantial way aside from an interpretation misstep that we're willing to correct tonight. And around Main Street, which has had a lot of public outreach regarding putting bikes up at the pedestrian level, which we do feel that that previous process and council acceptance qualifies us to be able to suggest these changes without going back out to the public. The discussions with the Walk Bike Council have happened at the Walk Bike Council meetings numerous times. Additionally, we have had emails back and forth behind the scenes. A lot of our discrepancy between suggestions that have been made through this and why it has taken so long is that there is a repeated interest to add things that do require a lot of public process. And we are at the point in time where Main Street fundamentally to open needs changes. And so there is a little bit of a timeliness with this that we were about to open a $30 million road and not be able to use the bike lanes. So that is the timeliness and the urgency. That is why we kind of had to close down our communication with the Walk Bike Council President and the Local Motion representative. We have dozens and hundreds of emails back and forth trying to solve and resolve these differences, and ultimately had to pare stuff down significantly just to move it forward.
But it doesn't preclude us from making additional changes in the future. For example, you brought up speed limits. I know some other municipalities do address it in that way.
It will be part of a larger conversation. You know, we know other communities in the state are beginning to have those. So that's kind of where we're at. I think Laura said that very well.
Yeah.
The impetus is Main Street. And we're certainly willing to sit down at the table and to take a broader look at, you know, what is involved in regulating modern modes of transportation within the right of way.
Okay. My other question is around the age restriction, which I know I don't think it's changing from what is current ordinance, but I am curious where 16, that age came from. And if there has been consideration of, you know, some municipalities factor in disabilities, mobility restricted folks. I'm not sure about elderly, but there are other ways to approach it. And I am concerned from a safety perspective, and I think this was brought up in, you know, some questions that went around before this meeting about people who do not feel safe riding in the street. And as much and as far as the bike infrastructure has come in the city, it's still, you know, patchy and not quite all there yet. And I am still concerned about that. So I'm curious, you know, about the age restriction, and then if anything else, if it would make sense to add anything else in there, or just look at that language a bit closer.
So that is something I think we can undertake as a next step. So the age limit of 16 is rooted in old state statutes. The city has mimicked it. 16 is the point in time where somebody can get a license to operate a vehicle, which has different definitions at state statute levels for what a vehicle classifies as. Certain mobility assisted devices actually start listing that age 16 you cannot ride this anywhere but on a highway, or you need a license to be able to ride it out in a highway. So it's because this is the age in which people can get a driver's license in the state of Vermont, that the classification of after you're able to drive, your device shouldn't be used anywhere other than in the road, or you shouldn't ever use one until you are licensed to drive. We understand the concern and the point. 16-year-olds feel very young to me today. I'm gonna have one in 3 years, and I cannot fathom releasing them out into the public in the way that we used to. There's just more people, more cars, more world out there. I think that that's a valid idea to bring to kind of this, how we're safely operating and encouraging our alternative transportation and making it safe for people. But it has to also be very carefully teased out with what the state sets up.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Commissioner O'Neill Vivanco?
I have nothing to say. I'm just kidding. Well, who was laughing loudest? Is that you, Jacob?
Yeah.
Caleb, thank you so much for responding to my questions, which I guess were similar enough to Commissioner Fox's questions, so appreciate that. And Laura, thank you also for agreeing to change the language in line 83. This presentation makes a lot more sense, and I kept rereading what you put in the packet, which didn't, to me, express sort of the urgency that we really need as a city to define what a bike facility is and who can use it, so that bicyclists and e-bikes are able to use that bike facility on Main Street. Is that my understanding? Right? Laura?
Yes, sorry. I know the camera's
Okay.
not on us over here, so it's hard to
sorry,
see.
you were probably shaking your head. Yeah, okay. So I think the clarity on that, has certainly helped this. I feel like there's so many gray areas. We don't want to, we live in a litigious society in the United States, and certainly need to be mindful of different users and how they use bikes and e-bikes and so forth. I think one thing I'm really concerned about is the rentals, the e-bike rentals. And I know that in, like someone coming from one of the bike shops downtown, I'm not going to name names, one of the bike shops downtown, and, getting on and making sure that we have clarity that really this is where you can go and this is where you are not able to go. And also for, parent of a teenager, that frontal lobe is not developed. And when we have dedicated space for all our users and we have an enhanced biking network, then we don't need to use a sidewalk. Right? I mean, I bike in the street all the time, but when my kids were little, I was on the sidewalk with them. I wasn't going to ride on the street until they got a little bit older. So I think it's all those gray areas that we really need to be mindful of, all our users, and the education and the signage and the instruction and the enforcement that goes along with this. Some of this falls outside the purview of the city. I have mentioned to like a gazillion people for years that we need mobility education instead of driver's education, really, because we're moving around in lots of different ways. Another comment about e-bikes on sidewalks. Again, I have seen people, I have even jumped on a sidewalk in my e-bike to kind of skirt some, pile of glass or whatever in the street. E-bikes are heavier. Like, yeah, I mean, I can, a 20-year-old can bomb past me any day of the week, whether I'm on a regular bike or not, but e-bikes are heavier. You know, there's probably like a 40, maybe 45-pound difference in those bikes. So they are heavier, and it is really important to be mindful of how we're going to manage our bike facilities. I don't know what the signage needs to, what the signage is going to read or say, so that our bike facilities indicate who has the right of way and how. Is this part of, I know it's not part of the ordinance, but it needs to be part of the plan.
There is actually language about who yields to who. There's hints of it in our ordinance, and it's covered well under state statute. But to your point about the education, you know, we are including signage. We're working on the slow zones as it relates to where the bikes and sidewalks do cross each other on Main Street. And we do think about that with some of our other facilities, but understanding there's new users every day, because e-bikes do make that a lot more attractive, and kind of doesn't limit you as age-wise as just a pedal bike does, that we can consider that as part of our review of the city and our bike infrastructure. It's a very valid point. It's because some of those are old and there were no e-bikes when those signs were put up.
Right. And regular, reminders, not just one sign at whatever the beginning is, but regularly posted sign about just, kind of who goes where. Like I know they even have that down at the Intervale. Is that the Intervale? Like, during ski season where like bikers, walkers, skiers go, whatever. So multiple signs like that. And then in the bike infrastructure, I know this is just outside ordinance, but we can't talk about changing these, this, what is it called? The downtown district. It's no longer the
City center, the inner fire district.
Yeah, it's the city center, which is now kind of huge.
Yeah.
Have you biked up Battery Street or down Battery Street? Like, where can we use that shared? Is that a shared path? No, I use that as a shared path. Okay, good.
Yeah.
I'm just using it as a shared path. So I appreciate the comments that Caleb sent earlier. This is sitting a little bit better with me, but I think it's one piece, like defining things, getting things in line with state statute is fine, but we as a city need all these other pieces, like bike racks, protected bike parking. When I read the statement about no bikes in any of the car parks and the parking structures, I thought those would be great places to have some protected bike parking, right? I've seen people steal bikes. How can we encourage people to ride their bikes downtown if you don't know if you're gonna be able to bike home? Those are all part of this kind of broader discussion that we need, because if we're gonna have this beautiful Main Street that's really a great street where we can have multiple types of users and modes of transportation and abilities, then we all need to be able to get off or out of our device and secure it. So add that, Jay. So those were more comments. I can't believe I think all my questions were answered before. So thank you for kind of going through all these details with us. I appreciate it. That's all.
Thanks. I want to say thank you to all of my fellow commissioners, because I think the discussion on this was really thoughtful. This is really complicated. I still don't understand it completely. We will offer public comments after, Christina, like after commissioner comments. You will have an opportunity. Yeah, I mean, I have to echo what Commissioner O'Neill Vivanco said. I think that the proposed edits that you brought here tonight, thank you for those. Those do assuage a lot of the concerns that have been brought up. I feel a little bit better about it. But yeah, I still really, I understand the need with the designated downtown, but I really, I'm really struggling with it. I don't know how else to put it? I don't know.
It is challenging, you know, it's not a section of the ordinance that we've brought up to you guys recently, and it is old.
Mhm.
It has a lot of old ideas in there, a lot of old terminology. It's something, again, that our Walk by Council in 2023 was like, what are we doing here?
Yeah.
But it's
1962.
was when we started some of that, yes. And it's hard. You guys are getting your eyes on kind of this outdated section for the first time in great granularity.
Mhm.
And we want to fix everything, and that's taken us a long time, and we've been trying for a long time.
Yeah, I mean, I don't need to rehash things that others have said, because I feel like, you know, that they've been asked and answered, so I'm gonna leave it. I'm gonna let public ask questions on, or provide comments. Staff don't engage, just so everyone is aware, but folks are welcome to provide additional comments on this item.
Can I ask one other thing?
Sure.
Sorry.
Christine.
Yeah, my apologies. I just wanted to ask kind of a clarifying question about the nature of the laws and liabilities as it applies to somebody trying to do something for their own safety, essentially. Like, to me, it seems like my limited understanding of the law is that, like, if someone did veer into the sidewalk to avoid, I don't know, a semi coming down the street in the wrong lane or something, that they would be kind of offered some sort of protection under, like, they are attempting to avoid, like, a worse situation. My point is, I think if that is true, or something like it is true, which I hope it is, making that clear to people, I think, might help people avoid some of the concern about, like, the specifics of, like, okay, if you violate this specific ordinance, like, we're coming after you or something, which I think is just not true anyway. So is that at all reflective of reality?
So we are definitely veering into not our area of expertise here. I can say you, and studying as a transportation engineer, we got some experience provided to us by other engineers that testified as expert witnesses, and a lot of those cases were either won or lost by somebody's choice to purposely avoid causing an accident versus just letting it happen to you. The places where people chose to avoid an accident were seen more favorably, even if it broke a law. So that is my personal experience that I received from people who worked more in this area, but I have no legal basis to provide advice on that.
Yeah, I realize that probably is nonsense for me to ask that question in that way, but the overall point is just that, like, I think I don't think many people read these ordinances directly anyway, but if
they are
someone...
there to offer protections to people, that if somebody does choose to behave badly, we have rules, regulations, and so on and so forth. You know, this is very focused on bikes and pedestrians. We all know we got a driver's license and we're asked to follow laws there, and when you choose to not follow the laws that you swore your license to, you know, you did sign something for that one at least. This becomes a little bit more difficult with interpretation because we don't ask people to, you know, sign their life away to walk on a sidewalk.
Yeah, and biking from South Burlington into Burlington,
Right.
and are things different.
So,
And
but it does provide and tries to provide protections should something not go right.
Gotcha, and I get that. My overall point is that I understand people are concerned about elements of the ordinances because they don't want to have a more restrictive regime than they thought already existed, and one that's probably good. It's probably good that people ride bikes, like, when it makes sense to, on sidewalks and things like that. So I just don't want people to interpret this in any way to be like, get off the sidewalks, like, you'd be better off getting hit by a car than being on the sidewalk, because that's insane. And so, like, I don't want to lose sight of that in all this of, like, yeah, we can define language and do all these other things, but, like, at the end of the day, try to protect yourself and other people as best you can, and, like, that's it.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay, hi, I'll be brief, I'll promise. I really appreciate you all grappling with these really important definitions, and all of you in the room, so thank you, and trying to make it better. And I agree with Peggy that, Commissioner O'Neill Vivanco, that it's part of a larger structure of all these things that are coming to be. I understand I can't ask a direct question, so I would pose maybe a potential clarifying note would be, how does the Main Street bike facility that's within a curb differ from the bike facility that is on Pine Street here that is also within the curb? So if I can't ask a question, perhaps somebody else might want to ask that clarifying question because of that bike, like what is a bike facility and who can use what where? So I think it might be helpful, because I don't know either, how Main Street differs from Pine Street. And I will conclude my comments.
Okay. Responding to public forum.
Which you don't usually do, but please.
Yes, we're the show tonight, right?
I could ask that question
Yeah.
just like she just said.
Yes.
I have a guess, and then you could correct me maybe.
All right, well, I'm going to look at the state statute definition because this is the only place this is actually defined. Bike lane means a portion of the roadway that has been designated for preferential or exclusive use of bicycles. It is distinguished from a portion of the roadway because it is not traveled for motor vehicles by a paint stripe or similar device. Paved road shoulders are considered bike lanes. And that is the challenge with Main Street, is that we have created a bike lane and not a shared use path. Pine Street's a shared use path on the west side. It has striped bike lanes in road where the shared use path is not. Main Street will indicate that the colored portion of the concrete sidewalk is bike only, like a bike lane for bike symbols. Based on the state statute definition of what pedestrians can do, they can obviously cross this. They should generally not travel in it, just like they should try not to travel in a bike lane on a roadway, but they are not exclusively prohibited, basically, of being anywhere unless they're unsafe. But that is kind of the definition difference between a shared use path, which talks about mixing of bicycles, pedestrians, and all of these other defined items in ways that they're allowed to be, versus on Main Street, we're trying to not mix and trying to keep lanes, sidewalk section, and a bike lane. If we called it a shared use path, we wouldn't be here tonight.
I was gonna, if I could quickly ask, if this didn't pass, I'm not saying it's not going to, but if it didn't, or if the city council didn't get to it in time, would that be an avenue to say this is a shared use path temporarily to allow it to be used?
I think I'm just not gonna leave it, I'm not gonna put the paint down to sign it, to designate it kind of the more exclusive use for bikes, and we may eliminate some signs and let it happen organically. But it would be better with some of those other designations in them.
Yeah.
Before we put public together with public.
Okay.
Thank you. Any other members of the public online comment on this item?
We do not have anyone signed up.
Okay. And maybe just, sorry, another clarifying question. So hypothetically, right, like if the commission doesn't necessarily recommend this ordinance change, it could still go to committee, right? So this is whether, just for the commission's understanding of this vote, it's an endorsement of the language, but it doesn't, or not, right? But it doesn't necessarily prohibit staff from moving forward with the changes through city council.
I believe that is correct.
Yeah.
This particular commission, while your opinion is highly valued, wouldn't quite have the authority in ordinance to codify.
Yeah,
such
just
proposal.
like wanting to point
And that's
that
an
out.
excellent point.
Yep.
Can I ask it clarify? Because I just want to make sure, because there was a lot of, we can add this and delete this and do this.
Yep.
What is the current language look like? There was a set line 78, striking e-bikes.
Yeah.
Yep.
What about line 74?
80.
74 has e-bikes as well.
There was line 83 adding multi-use path and shared use path. There was line 70, was it 73 or 74, Laura? Sorry.
Line 83,
So-
yes. Line 78, I did not touch 74 because that's within the city center.
Okay. Because I was going to propose if we could just look at wherever it said e-bikes, because if you allow bicycles and motor assist, micromobility devices, could you just add e-bikes in front of bicycles everywhere it says that they're allowed? Is that simpler? Because I don't want to break the law. I can ride on this road, but not on this street.
So yeah, it's really talking about within the city center.
It does say in line 74 and 75 that it's for 16 years and younger. It just caught my eye that it had e-bikes on line 74.
You could probably also delete it from there and allow kind of a roundabout way to just allow it to apply how this lists out, where over the age of 16, you should not be riding your bike within our city center on our pedestrian facilities. And if you're under the age of 16, you can ride a bicycle as kind of remotely defined and inclusive of several items on the sidewalk.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure that I understood.
Okay. So clarifying that, it means
Removing e-bikes from line 74 as well.
E-bikes from 74 as well, so 3 different edits.
Mhm. This is exactly how the ordinance committee operates, and it's, I'm gonna say it publicly, it's maddening trying to follow their, change this decimal and this comma on this
That's why I had to ask.
line item.
Yeah.
This is hard. It's hard to have to function this way, and that committee is fabulous at it, and it's hard.
Okay.
So line 83 is to add shared. Can you just say it again? So that-
Add multi-use path
And shared
and
use.
shared use path. Yeah.
After pathways, comma.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, would anyone like to make a motion on this item? And there's proposed language in our packet, on page 11.
I move to recommend the following changes to Burlington City Ordinance for approval by the Ordinance Committee and City Council. And that is the written Chapter 6 Bicycles, Article 1 in general, and Chapter 20 Motor Vehicle and Traffic, Article 1 in general, also including the various changes in line about 70 to 80 already discussed and communicated with the commission as recommended.
Thanks, Commissioner Montano.
I'll second it. Is that what needs to happen?
A second does need to happen. Any discussion on that motion? Okay. Let's call for a vote. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Lukewarm aye.
I'm a no.
I'm a no too, I'm just not quite there yet.
Okay, so the motion still passes 4-6, or 4-2,
4-2.
equals 6.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Really complicated, really robust discussion.
We really appreciate all your comments
Yeah.
too. I think that was helpful for everyone to kind of talk through this, and your insights really, truly appreciated. So thank you.
And we will continue to work with Local Motion and the Walk by Council on the more global comments that you made tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yep.
And even further through ordinance committee if you can tolerate.
Yep.
Thank you all.
Thanks,
Thank
Council.
you. Thanks, Lauren. Thanks, Caleb.
All right. Let's move on to item 6, Elmwood Pods.
All right. So I was asked by a number of commissioners, a couple commissioners, to just give a brief update after there was some media coverage on the future of the pods. The commission, as you all know, but the public may not know, did grant an extension of this use on what was the Elmwood parking facility, surface parking lot, and that was last year, and the approval went through June of 2028. While the news story talked about the pods being quote-unquote permanent, in talking to CEDO, the Community and Economic Development Office, as well as reading Champlain Housing Trust clarification that showed up in Front Porch Forum, they all are, CEDO and CHT agree that really the approval through June 2028 is what their current approach is for managing the pods, and that if there is a desire to extend beyond that, they will need to come back in front of you and get approval. And at this point, as CHT said in their Front Porch Forum post, their focus is on trying to provide transitional and permanent housing, or permanent housing, and that this is an interim strategy in their mind. And so it was unfortunate that the media covered this in a way that got everybody frustrated, but happy to answer any questions.
Thanks, yeah, and I think, you know, we have some commissioners here who have not, we're not here for that vote, and so want to open it up to questions, particularly our newer folks who, you know, are,
right.
You know, I remember voting on this, but so I might offer, I don't know if Commissioner Davis was here, but certainly Commissioner Hayes, if you have questions, want to go first?
Well, I just
Not to call you out or
no.
anything. Yeah.
If you could just provide a quick summary or background for it, that would be helpful.
So we did find the original documentation, the Cezanne report. The Traffic Commission did approve in 1955 the purchase of this property to turn it into a surface parking lot called the Elmwood Lot. It's operated as such since that time, until there was a request that was in front of you to suspend the use of the parking lot for an interim defined period. And the commission has approved an extension to that through June of 2028 for this interim use. And ultimately, we are supporting, you know, the community's needs for this transitional housing. But ultimately, the Parking Facilities Fund paid for this lot, and so its final disposition should be either a parking lot or the Parking Facilities Fund should be paid for this asset if it has some permanent future use. Given that this is an interim use and there's a social need, you all allowed this kind of interim use.
That's helpful. Thank you.
Hopefully that's helpful context.
Does anyone else have other questions on this? This was something that the chair flagged and asked Director Spencer to bring up, so that's
Okay.
why we're talking about it. And yeah, I think it's important. Does anyone else have any comments, questions on this?
No, thanks, Chapin. I brought it up to Chris,
Yeah.
Chair Damiani, when we saw it in the news, and I was like, what the heck is going on with that? So we just needed clarification that clearly the media misspoke, and that it still is under our purview, which is really what we needed to know. So thank you.
Great. And thank you to City Engineer Wheelock, who found the annual report with the purchase date, because she stores the archives of all past annual reports.
I had a quick question just about like the process for this. I guess when should we expect to hear about it again? If someone does
Right.
want to extend, or if they don't, or
Right. I mean, it will be interesting to understand what the needs are as we approach that June 2028 timeline. My position is that it's the community, the council can decide what the needs are. Ultimately, if the needs, the highest and best use is not a surface parking lot, I'm okay with that as long as the Parking Facilities Fund is made whole. You know, I think we're in tight budget times. I don't want the Parking Facilities Fund to be taken advantage of, and so that will be my interest. But I also simultaneously understand there may be uses other than a surface parking lot that are most needed for the future of Burlington.
Okay, thanks.
I guess to give a little more color to that, so the last time we approved this lease, the director of CEDO, who has since changed over, came and gave a presentation to the commission, and we approved the lease of the parking lot to CEDO and CHT for the current use. So that's what the process looked like in practice, I guess.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
I can't remember if I was here for that or not.
Yeah.
Just do not know.
Yeah, I can't remember. It was like right on the cusp of when you started, so.
Yeah.
Okay, any other questions on this one? Okay, since it's information, I think we can close it out. Move on to item 7, which is the director's report.
All right, I'll be quick. Things are in the packet. We are excited. Construction season is here. We are doing some initial work on Main Street. The contractor is mobilized. Parkway will begin the week of the 23rd. We are coordinating with Burlington High School on the civil site work improvements to North Avenue and Institute Road. You saw the news on recycling that the City Council did make a decision on March 9th to support 2 directions. One is maintaining the city's recycling program, but operate it through a contract operation for the next 7 years. Thank you for your engagement on this issue. Simultaneously, echoing kind of some interests of commissioners, was a call to do a full comprehensive consolidated collection study that will include a city-run option. That work will get underway by the beginning of FY28, July 1, 2027. And appreciate everybody's engagement on that issue. The last piece I'll mention before turning it to Public Information Manager Rob Goulding is that the CarShare Vermont and DPW have been working to ensure that the CarShare spaces downtown are maintained through the Main Street project. We did a temporary relocation to ensure the spaces were available during construction, but in their final condition, we are working with them to resolve exactly where the CarShare cars will be placed. I had a good conversation with Director Borden this morning. We will be getting together in person with our teams to make sure we have a final plan that has both their support and ours. Let's see, Rob, anything to add?
Really briefly, Chapin mentioned the transition with Casella that will be happening in the kind of medium term. I think right now the most operative thing to know for residents who might have questions is nothing changes for you right now. And more communications certainly will be released. So for folks who have any uncertainty or questions, send them to us or our website, and we'll be communicating with the public as kind of things unfold for how the transition works. Shortly after we meet next time, we'll be having our annual Clean Sweep program. Right now, we're tentatively looking at April 22nd, Wednesday, until May 1st. As you know, cars need to be off the street, zone by zone. We'll go through a variety of communications methods. Certainly happy to take any feedback if you've heard neighbors or residents not hearing about Clean Sweep. We'll be locking those dates in soon and more information to come, but that's generally in line with what we do every year, or the time we do it every year. And then Chapin mentioned a few key projects that are kicking off. We have 2 major projects, Main Street and the Champlain Parkway, finishing construction this year. A lot of bond money starting to go out on the street for some of that important maintenance that flies sometimes under the radar, streets, sidewalks, as well as some water work that all have a chance to be impactful, but also to really reinvigorate some local infrastructure. So to that end, we've requested time at all of the NPAs in April or May, depending on when they can fit us in. So look for us then. And if you, on the construction side, think of any topics you think we should be briefing the public on, we are always open to your suggestions. So thank you.
Does anyone have any questions or comments specifically on the items mentioned in the director's report?
I do.
Go ahead.
Parent of a BHS student. Can you clarify a little bit more about how that intersection, North Avenue with Institute Road, how that intersection is going to change? Like there's talk about the bus shelters as well. I mean, this has been such a long haul for Burlington parents and BHS students that I really want to know that it's going to go right.
Okay, Chapin's apparently passing it to me.
I'm happy to start and just say that, yes, GMT, the school district, and DPW are very actively communicating. The bus shelters are a key element of this. I am not happy with the location of the northbound bus shelter that's far away from the signalized intersection, or down in the swale of North Avenue there. And we are working to try to figure out how to make this all work. There are improvements to that intersection that are permit required through the zoning permit that the school received. But there are other improvements such as the northbound bus shelter, which was not a requirement. So collectively, we need to figure out how to fund and coordinate that work, and that discussion is still active. And I'll turn it over to City Engineer Wheelock for any more.
Yep, so some of the other specifics of how they're improving the intersection, they do need to retime it to have it operate a little bit more efficiently. They are adding a crosswalk to the north side of the intersection. They are improving the sidewalk facilities that used to come down along the ledge. That sidewalk will be continuous all the way through the intersection, and then there will be a sidewalk on the north side of the road to their driveway and kind of points further west all the way until you get to the end of their property at Rock Point. With this, they are also widening Institute Road slightly so that we can have a bike lane right at the intersection on the side of the road going westbound, and then also be able to have enough width between the two turn lanes for a bike lane for bikes that are going to go eastbound left onto North Ave. So improvements there. We can't take a lot. The sidewalk on the south side is actually already outside the city's right of way, and it's going to get further outside of the city's right of way. The sidewalk on the north side is going to be outside the city's natural right of way, so we are signing easement agreements with the school to be able to own and maintain as DPW the sidewalks that are essentially being installed for the overall public benefit. They're going to serve their own community very well, but they also are kind of more regional connections outside of their parcel. And as Chapin mentioned, inside of the permit conditions, they had already had the relocation of the southbound stop from the kind of wider pavement area on the south side of the intersection to the north side of the intersection. This aligns very closely with their own internal circulation of the pathways of how they're going to get the students from that bus stop into the actual school. So that's already in there. We're working with GMT on purchasing a new shelter, so we're not reusing the old shelter. That was the original plan. We're at a benefit that this plan has taken so long to implement that GMT has new bus shelter standards and are removing the old ones. That is what's facilitating Chapin's idea of moving the other shelter, that the new shelters are small enough that we can fit it on the north side of the intersection, and now we're working on the funding.
So both north and southbound shelters will be on the north side of Institute Road on North Avenue. Sorry.
Yep, that is what we're working towards.
Okay, that makes sense.
There is now enough space with the redesigned shelter. We can bump in the curb a little bit by the, I forget the name of the condo association that's there.
City Bluffs.
City
Yes,
Bluffs.
I was going to say that, but then that didn't hit right.
Wait, what's it called?
City Bluffs.
City Bluffs is the neighborhood association on the other side of the road. Yeah, so we can bump in a little bit, not sacrifice the bike lane, still fit the shelter in, still fit a sidewalk in.
Okay, great. And you said changing the timing. I mean, right now it's so slow. I see people blow the red light turning from Institute Road because you're turning gray, waiting for it to turn. So recognizing that once regular traffic patterns resume, there'll be a need for that. Anything else? I mean, I seem to recall that being a high crash intersection that maybe had a little bit to do with the fact that you have like, 800 teenagers leaving there on a regular basis, but also the geometry. I don't know if, I know that's a bigger question, but just didn't know what else was going to be.
The geometry was a little weird. The way that they used to have their bus loop was a little bit weird, and so it is certainly more organized as they conclude. We probably don't have, and the school departments probably doesn't have kind of the renderings up as to kind of what this area is going to look like. It's obviously behind a construction fence right now. So yeah, it is a little bit more organized. It's going to feel more traditional to be able to come up. There is still the right turn lane coming on from the new north end into the school. There is still the northbound left if you're coming from kind of the downtown city center into the school. You're testing my memory threads here, whether or not that includes kind of a leading phase for that left turn. But one new addition is that they are going to exclusive pedestrian phase is what they proposed in their traffic study.
That's fantastic. That's great. Thank you so much. And it'll be all done by August. What's this start date?
Oh yeah, or you see new faces here.
Yeah. We are
right.
trying, Commissioner O'Neill Vivanco, I will say we don't have the full funding plan yet solved for the northbound shelter because it's not permit required. But I share your commitment that we need to open the school with well-designed multimodal facilities, and I'm going to find a way.
Let me know, because I can get up a bake sale like that, get a bunch of parents who have been, seen kids graduate all over God's creation over the past several years. So
Great.
bake sale it is. Thank you for the update. Appreciate it.
Thanks. Does anyone else have other questions on this one? Rob, I do want to just hone in on something I think you said about some of the construction work that's going to be happening this season is because of the bonds that passed, and I think that was a big ask of the community, and those bonds passed overwhelmingly, and just if we can tie that communication together, that would be amazing.
Definitely, that's in.
I'm super proud of those bonds. I think y'all worked really hard. I think we all supported them really strongly, and so just bringing that piece back of like thanking the community for their support, and here are your tax dollars at work and blah blah blah. It's just cliche, but also nice and feel good.
It's a great idea. I think it's in line with where we want to take it. So thanks.
Thanks. Okay. With that, I'm going to close out the director's report item. Move on to commissioner items. Does anyone have any commissioner comments?
I just have a question. And I have been gone for a week, so maybe this is already happening. But the Pine Street traffic signals, have we gotten an update on when they're gonna be up and running, or? Oh, okay, sorry.
Hi. So yeah, the Pine Street signals, the contractor there needs to be able to put down some delineating paint on the Main and Pine intersection specifically before they're allowed to turn it on. The Parkway, with how old it is, has a 2011 version of VTrans standards, which really requires that the paint be down before you ever turn a signal on into timing or even into flash. The Main Street signals are under a newer specification from VTrans and did not have kind of the same exclusive requirements, so we were able to turn those on this week. So Pine Street signals requires enough warm temperature for the paint to go down. We're looking at that mid-April to be able to put the paint down. We have a small civil site change to make in the King Street intersection, which can happen before that point in time. So,
okay, so weather
tentative mid-April.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks. Anyone else? Go ahead.
I hesitate to ask because I fear it will volunteer me, but would you want one of us at the ordinance meeting for this ordinance we just dealt with?
You are certainly welcome to be there to represent the commission's viewpoints and things that were discussed. We will do our best to reflect the key salient points in our communication to them, but you are also most welcome to participate. It's your choice.
Yeah, I will say when we brought through the kind of the safety improvements, the director directives, as well as some of the other parking changes, you guys had all previously seen that first, and there was definitely some challenges between how that had come through, your intentions. We did communicate them. There was public comment that I think took away from some of the things that you had acted upon by interpretation or confusion, and then they got confused. And it took a little bit longer to get those through. So I would welcome support so that things can advance as quickly as possible. But at the same time, these are very reasonable people. And they'll pick up on their own things as well.
Okay, so it sounds like not a requirement, but
Yeah.
we
An
could go.
opportunity.
When is that meeting?
They often meet at the end of a workday at City Hall. So usually it's a 3:30 or 4 o'clock start of a meeting. Sometimes 5, but not usually any later.
Is, for this specific thing, is it already like on their schedule, or is
Nope.
it? Okay, gotcha. Okay, well.
But if
I'll-
you are interested in being engaged,
Yeah.
we can make an effort to make sure that you're noticed of the upcoming meeting when it gets on the agenda.
Okay, sure. I will not promise that I will go, but
Yeah.
and if you realize later on, you're like, yeah, we really do need someone, then I will try to
Yeah.
go, but yeah, it'd be nice to know.
Okay.
That's all I had.
Thanks. Anyone else? Okay. Yeah, with that, I will close out item 8, and our item 9 is adjournment and next meeting date.
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
Seconded. Any discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Say aye.
Aye.
Aye. It's
Thank
8:18.
you all.
Mhm.
Bye, Peggy. Feel better.
Bye.